It's been a good run, my friend. A long 8 years surviving the Arks. We started back in 2015 with the first raid. No turrets back then. It was a primitive time, just pterodons and argents and wrecks, of course. Much simpler times, but great times as well. We were all learning the ropes together. Discovering the Arks. No tech, no fabricated snipers, just long necks and pig fights, bowlers and clubs. These are the days. Multiple tribes allied up to attack the griefers on the server. We joined forces on our server, put differences aside, and went to battle for the greater good. This was a huge raid at the time. 20 plus people. And there was no turrets. So we just went in with grenades. Stone walls had just been introduced. And it was wood and stone and a little bit of metal. The primitive times of Ark. In my opinion, the best times of Ark. Max level tame might have been about 20. Something crazy low at the time. But it led to some awesome fights. Some epic battles. The best times are when everyone's learning together. And it might be nostalgia talking, but these were some of my favorite times when everything was new. So satisfying hitting those snipes. And the pick battles were epic. Argents didn't even have proper animations. But it didn't matter, because it was all so new. And there was nothing else like Ark. After the island released, we had the center, and this map was epic and still one of the best maps in Ark to this day. A multi-layered map with underground cavernous areas and so many hidden nooks and crannies for solos and small tribes to hide. Quets and Gigas had only recently been introduced, there was no turret cap on bases, and Quetzals had turrets on top of them. It was a mess, but it's all we knew. And it was still fun. Even though it was so broken. But we pushed through because there was nothing like it. It was madness. Actual madness. Looking back on this. The floating islands on the center is still one of my favorite locations in Ark. Such an amazing place. And eventually we got the redwoods on the center as well as on the island. And the biomes began to diversify even more on the new Ark expansions. Next came Scorched Earth. Out of nowhere it dropped. Burnt and barren with wyverns and rock elementals. It was amazing. Scorched Earth was a vast desert landscape filled with dangerous creatures, intense heat, and unique challenges. With its unforgiving environment, we had to adapt quickly or be swept away by the sands. We had some great battles, and the wyverns were the best addition to. And some of the worst additions may be flamethrowers. But this map was amazing. It felt so different. I remember walking our caravan of rock elementals and flying our wyverns across the map to raid our enemies. Some epic times. There was no cryopods back then, so we had to fill huge caves with our wyverns, and they couldn't breed either, so we had to run the trenches for eggs. Towards the end of Scorched Earth is when we finally got our first taste of cross-server transfers as well, via the obelisks in Ark. Up until this point, we weren't able to transfer to different servers with our tames and creatures. And then we had Ragnarok, still one of the largest and most expansive maps. It has some great challenges like underground dungeons for great loot, and it also has a huge expansive sky border, which many Sky Quetzal bases called home. And this is where we lived for a long time as well. Ragnarok also added the addition of griffins, which were a huge shake-up to the meta. Griffins would dive bomb your boots in one hit, so we had to get really high dura boots at the time, I remember. And this map also even had rock elementals. Because of Ragnarok's size, many tribes built on the huge plateaus, which was great spots for many alpha tribes back in the day. I still have many fond memories of the Ragnarok wars. This is when tech started to become a little bit more prevalent on servers, and the Plant Y Wars happened. Good times. Simpler times. And then we had Aberration. In the ever-evolving realm of Ark, a new adventure awaited, and we journeyed deep underground to explore the mysteries of Ark Aberration. This map was definitely one of my favorites. Imagine a world where the sky is sealed off and the earth itself is alive, with an eerie bioluminescent glow. And this is the captivating realm of Ark Aberration. We had no flyers, we were locked in an underground cavern with reapers and rock drakes. This was a great shake-up and it felt completely different, having no flyers, and it was a more grounded approach. The glide suits made for some new and diverse encounters and interesting fights, and the plant-wide meta was strong. Aberration added batteries which changed PvP forever, giving us the power of an autonomously powered turret on the fly to give cover on foot PvP. It was the golden age of Ark in my opinion, the greatest time. I loved the addition of the rock drake trench. It was a challenge to go out and get your first eggs. Rock drakes couldn't even breed back then, so we had to run it constantly. And reapers were also a great challenge to tame and become impregnated by. And the map added so many hiding spots and layers. I really look back on Aberration fondly. And tech still wasn't a huge thing at this point in Ark. It was great fun, it felt completely different. And there was nothing like it. This is also the time that Rockwell reared his ugly head, and we started to begin to see the full story of Ark. Some great times were had, and many more to come. Next came Extinction. Extinction takes place on a future dystopian Earth that has been corrupted by element, and various creatures located in wasteland zones have been infected by this element, and they will attack regardless of their normal behavior. Extinction introduced a new mechanic to the game, events where the player must defend an orbital supply drop or an element mineral vein for loot, resources, and element in all forms. New creatures were also added, both organic and technological, such as gas bags, Forcer, and the final bosses of Extinction called Titans, powerful, huge kaiju. And, of course, the Managama and the mechs. Extinction was when Ark became tech-focused. On this map, you could not survive without it. Element basically grew on trees and we had to farm and fight for it, which was a cool concept. But it completely changed the meta of Ark, and it became a whole new beast. No longer was it primitive in any way. Extinction was the beginning of the end. The beginning of the tech age of Ark. And although some people enjoy the tech side of Ark, I've never been a big fan of it. It was a fun experience the first time through though. The new tame additions were unbalanced, not to mention the Titans. The Managama was the most spastic addition I've ever seen. It teleported around and it was a mess for PvP. And whoever tamed the Titan could simply wipe out any other tribe. And it was still fun. Because again, there is nothing like Ark. The Abandoned City was a really cool piece of this map. Next up, we had Velger. This map was very underrated with an underground aberration zone. We found a place to stay hidden, living in the massive trees underneath the rest of the world, and the rat life began. Shooting our ziplines high into the trees, we built a platform to stay out of sight and out of mind. After all the battles and wars in the large tribes, it was time to live small and low-key. I remember we had some neighbours with the same idea though, and they moved in nearby and we had to deal with them fast, before they dealt with us. These are the battles, and these are the times that make Ark interesting. When you can lose it all so fast, or you can make it all just as quick. Make it or break it. Above the ground, Velger had some amazing cliff faces and superb biomes like no other map we had seen. It was a great primitive experience with little tech focus. We didn't know what was about to come around the corner. This was to be the last of our really primitive experiences in Ark. The next expansion brought with it a complete change to what we knew as Ark. Next came the release of Ark Genesis Part 1. It was like nothing we had ever seen. We found ourselves in a simulation with our companion HLNA, tasked with exploring this new world. This was a huge change for Ark, with instant zones and teleporting. It had some cool teams like the Megachelon and the Spiders. The zones were amazing, especially the underwater zone with hidden bubbles and huge pillars. It was great to build in and explore, and they gave us the opportunity once more to stay hidden. We built on the ocean pillar, and I remember getting attacked by the giant Megachelons. It was an amazing experience. And again, it just felt completely different. But Unfortunately, there also came some additions like the tech skiff that made grinding a thing of the past. Element was way too easy to get and the game became way too advanced and tech focused, in my opinion. Some enjoyed it, most didn't. It was a huge departure from Ark. The biggest addition though was definitely the cryopods. We could put our tames inside of a Pokeball and hide them away. This meant we could live much smaller and much more condensed and hide away even more than we had before. So there was some good and bad with this expansion. But as always, it was amazing, and there was nothing else like it. Still to this day, the experiences on Ark are like nothing else. And next we had Crystal Isles. My favourite map. This map was where we found each other. Crystal Wyverns were tameable with Crystal. It was a great addition, and it made for some really interesting progression. This is where I began to tame my Crystal Wyverns, tame a Parasaur, and tame an Arthropluera and scout the map and become the Wyvern Scout of Ark. I made some great snowballs along the way, finding secret hidden stashes. The floating islands reminiscent of the center made for some great hiding spots. So many hiding spots. Crystal Isles was a fantastical map with huge, diverse biomes and a great variety. We, of course, built hidden on the floating islands, tucked away in our wyvern nest, with our tames safely cryopoded away. We didn't need too much space to build any longer, so the smaller and the rattier the spot, the better. But our spot was too strong, so the hole got filled in, and sadly, we had to move. But Crystal Isles was still a great experience, and would become my main home for many years to come. Had a decent element progression, and it was very balanced, not to mention the grenade shooting flyer. This was an epic experience. Experiences like Crystal Isles felt much more grounded and engaging than the technological and advanced experiences of Genesis. But up next, we had some more Genesis. And finally we had Genesis Part 2. And this map really went off the deep end. We come to the main conclusion of Ark, and this was a shock to the system. We spawned in with a fully functioning tech suit that didn't even need element. Farming, grinding, everything became so easy that it didn't feel like survival anymore. We woke up on a huge spaceship traveling to an unknown destination. The only problem was that Rockwell was there too, so we had to defeat him before he destroyed everything. This map added some crazy new tames and additions to help us do so, like the Astradelphus, the Shadowmane, and the Mech, and the technological marvel of the Strider, not to mention the Noglin, which you could use to take control of enemy players. These tames changed Ark forever, making fights boring and dominated by these overpowered tames. If you didn't have these tames, you would lose. We built in the underwater bubble, one of the most powerful spots in Ark. We had some epic battles in this spot, and we dominated, and we conquered Genesis Part 2, until we returned to a more familiar Ark with Fjor. Finally, we returned to a more primitive time with the Viking-themed Fjor. This map was huge, including nearly all the previous biomes, and including the ability to teleport like Genesis. This map was a fresh experience with the Desmodus and the Andrewsarchus, making it a very diverse and fresh experience. We built in the great trees of the Vandenheim biome, and this was nothing like anything we had ever seen in Ark before. This map was a great finish for our Ark journey, and these trees and this biome was amazing. It was so massive and expansive. It again had some tech, but unfortunately it was hard to get as one tribe could lock it down and primlock the other tribes. But we fought valiantly and got enough element to build up and defend ourselves until we were finally meshed. But we had a great run. This isn't the end of the Ark journey. Overall, Ark has been a great journey. There is truly nothing else like it. Nothing else as huge and expansive as Ark. It has been a wild ride and a great ride. And there is only more to come with Ark Survival Ascended. This is our journey on Ark so far. On to the next one.